You know, so many people lose themselves in the name of love. They give too much, they sacrifice too much, and they forget that respect isn't earned by how much you bend over backwards for someone. It's earned by how much you value yourself first. When it comes to relationships, there are boundaries that protect your worth, your dignity, and your future. And the truth is, there are certain things you should never do for a man, no matter how much you care, no matter how deep the feelings go. Because the moment you cross these lines, you don't just lose him, you risk losing yourself. Never lose your identity to please him, because the moment you let go of who you are to mold yourself into what someone else wants, you silently surrender the very essence that makes you valuable. Too often, people in relationships fall into this trap, believing that if they act, think, dress, or live in a way that makes the other person comfortable, they will be loved more deeply, cherished more fully, and kept more securely. But the truth is, the more you erase your individuality to fit into someone else's mold, the more invisible you become, not only to them, but also to yourself. You start forgetting what made you laugh before they came along, what lit up your soul when you were alone, and what values defined you long before love knocked on your door. Relationships are meant to add to your identity, not erase it. And if someone requires you to shrink so they can shine, it's not love. It's control disguised as affection. When you lose yourself for someone else, it doesn't happen all at once. It's subtle. It starts with small compromises, like setting aside your own hobbies because he doesn't find them interesting, or avoiding certain friends because he doesn't like them. Then it grows bigger. You stop pursuing opportunities that once excited you because you worry it might make him uncomfortable, or you mute your opinions because you're scared they'll cause conflict. Over time, these small sacrifices build into a life that no longer feels like yours. You may look in the mirror and recognize your face, but not the spark in your eyes. You may hear your own voice, but feel like the words you speak don't belong to you. And that disconnection, that quiet emptiness, is the cost of giving up your identity to please someone who should have loved you for exactly who you are. The tragedy is that the more you try to please him by abandoning yourself, the less respect you gain. People may take what you give, but they rarely value what they didn't have to earn. If he sees you constantly bending, changing, and sacrificing without standing firm in your truth, he doesn't see strength, he sees submission. And while submission might temporarily keep peace, it breeds resentment in the long run. You resent yourself for what you've given up, and he eventually takes for granted the parts of you that once made you radiant. That is why keeping your identity intact is not selfish, it's necessary. You cannot pour love into someone else's life if your own well has run dry. You cannot demand respect from someone else if you've stopped respecting yourself. What makes you attractive, what makes you valuable, what makes you unforgettable, is not your ability to disappear into someone else's needs, but your ability to stand tall in your uniqueness. Your quirks, your dreams, your passions, your perspectives. That's what drew him to you in the first place. If you abandon those things, you're not only betraying yourself, but also stripping the relationship of its authenticity. Real love thrives on truth, on two people showing up as they are, not on one person wearing a mask just to keep the other comfortable. If you change your identity just to secure a man, you don't have a relationship. You have an arrangement built on fear and insecurity, and here's the hard truth. The person who truly loves you will never want you to lose yourself for their sake. A man who genuinely values you will encourage your individuality, not silence it. He will push you toward your dreams, not pull you away from them. He will respect your boundaries, not cross them in the name of love. If you feel that you have to constantly shrink, constantly give up parts of yourself, or constantly compromise your core values to make him stay, then he's not staying for you. He's staying for the version of you that serves his convenience. That is not love, that is dependency, and dependency is not what your soul was designed to settle for. So protecting your identity is not about being difficult, stubborn, or unwilling to compromise. It's about understanding that compromise has limits. You can compromise on what movie to watch, where to eat dinner, or even how to decorate the house, but you never compromise on your passions, your beliefs, your self-worth, or your character, because once those are gone, you've given away more than love could ever repay. When you stand in your identity, you remind yourself and him that you are a whole person, not half of one. You remind both of you that love is not about completion, but about connection, not about losing yourself, but about finding deeper ways to grow together while still holding onto who you are. And when you learn to do that, you'll see that the right man will meet you where you stand, not ask you to step away from yourself to follow him, never sacrifice your dreams for his comfort. Because the moment you set aside your purpose to make space for someone else's convenience, you silently agree to live smaller than you were created to be. Dreams are not luxuries, they are the calling of your heart, the blueprint of the life you are meant to build. When you put them on the shelf to keep a man happy, you teach yourself that his path matters more than yours, that his comfort is worth more than your potential, and that love requires you to dim your light so his can shine brighter. But the truth is, when you bury your dreams for the sake of someone else's ease, you don't just lose opportunities, you lose parts of your soul that will never stop whispering, reminding you of what you walked away from. It often starts subtly. Maybe you're passionate about pursuing a certain career, but he feels threatened by your ambition, so you decide to slow down. Maybe you dream of traveling, exploring, and experiencing life, but he prefers staying in his comfort zone, so you compromise until your passport collects dust. Or maybe you've always imagined building something of your own, whether it's a business, a book, or a legacy, but he convinces you it's impractical, so you let it go. Each time you sacrifice one of these dreams, you're not just compromising on a plan, you're compromising on a piece of yourself. Those pieces don't disappear, they pile up as regrets, and regrets are heavy burdens that love cannot erase. A relationship should inspire you to pursue your dreams, not discourage you from them. The right man will see your goals not as threats but as testaments to your strength and individuality. He will understand that a woman with vision, drive, and purpose is a woman who brings energy and life into the relationship. But when you choose to shrink for the sake of his comfort, you send a message that your dreams are negotiable, that your desires can wait, that his happiness is worth more than your fulfillment. Over time, this imbalance creates resentment. You may smile on the outside, but inside you'll feel the ache of unrealized potential. And resentment doesn't just affect you, it corrodes the relationship, turning what could have been love into quiet bitterness. What many people don't realize is that sacrificing your dreams doesn't make love stronger, it makes it weaker. Because love built on sacrifice of self eventually collapses under the weight of unspoken frustrations. You cannot show up fully in a relationship if part of you is grieving the life you wanted but never pursued. And no matter how much you love him, no matter how much you try to convince yourself that you can live without those dreams, your soul knows the truth. It knows that settling for less than your potential is not peace, it's quiet defeat. And defeat disguised as love always leaves scars. Your dreams are not selfish, they are necessary, they are proof that you are alive, that you were meant for more, that you carry within you the ability to shape the world in your own unique way. When you give them up, you don't just betray yourself, you rob the world of what only you could have created. You also rob the relationship of the vitality and inspiration that comes from being with someone who is passionately alive. Because the reality is, when you pursue your dreams, you don't just elevate yourself, you elevate everyone connected to you. A woman walking boldly in her purpose is magnetic, powerful, and inspiring. And the man who truly values you will never want you to hide that brilliance for his comfort. And if a man feels uncomfortable with your dreams, it's not your job to shrink them. It's his job to grow into a partner who can handle them. Love is not about clipping wings. It's about flying together. It's about cheering for each other's victories, standing by each other in challenges, and knowing that when one rises, the other rises too. If he can't celebrate your dreams, then he doesn't deserve to share the rewards of your success. If he needs you to sacrifice your vision to keep him secure, then he's not looking for a partner, he's looking for someone to play small so he can feel big. And you were not created to live small for anyone, so never, under any circumstances, put away the dreams that make your heart race, your mind alive, and your spirit strong. Protect them, nurture them, and fight for them, because they are part of your identity, part of your journey, and part of your contribution to this world. The man who is truly worthy of your love will not only accept your dreams, he will help you build them, brick by brick, step by step, until the life you imagined becomes the life you are living. Never accept disrespect in the name of love, because the moment you start normalizing behavior that wounds your dignity, you teach yourself to settle for less than you deserve. Disrespect rarely begins with something obvious. It often shows up in subtle ways: an unkind comment brushed off as a joke, a dismissive glance when you share your thoughts, or a broken promise explained away with excuses. At first you may ignore it, convincing yourself that it's small, that it's not worth making an issue out of, that love requires patience. But over time, those small cracks widen into fractures, and soon you find yourself in a relationship where disrespect feels routine, where your feelings don't matter as much as keeping the peace, and where you no longer recognize the confident person you used to be. Disrespect doesn't always come in raised voices or cruel words. Sometimes it hides in silence, in neglect, in indifference. When he forgets what's important to you, when he dismisses your accomplishments, when he makes decisions that impact both of you without considering your input, those are all forms of disrespect. And the danger lies in how easily they can be minimized. You tell yourself he's stressed, you tell yourself he didn't mean it, you tell yourself it's just how he is. But the truth is, each act of disrespect chips away at your self-worth, until one day you wake up and realize you've allowed love to be the excuse for mistreatment. Respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship. Without it, love cannot thrive, because love without respect is not love. It's attachment, dependency, or control. When you allow disrespect, you don't just harm your present, you set a dangerous standard for your future. You create a pattern that tells him it's acceptable to treat you this way, and tells you that silence is safer than standing up for yourself. But boundaries are not built in silence. They are built in courage. And courage means refusing to tolerate what diminishes you, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it risks conflict, even when it means walking away. The problem with tolerating disrespect is that it convinces you to rewrite your own worth. You start believing that maybe you're asking for too much, maybe your standards are unrealistic, maybe this is just what relationships look like. But that's not true. The respect you deserve is not negotiable. It's not too much to ask to be spoken to kindly, to have your feelings valued, to be treated as an equal partner. It's not too much to ask for honesty, loyalty, and consideration. And if he tries to make you feel guilty for expecting these things, it's because he benefits from your lowered standards. The danger is not just in the disrespect itself, but in what it does to your spirit. Slowly, you begin to silence your own voice. You stop sharing your opinions because you're tired of being dismissed. You stop celebrating your wins because you know they'll be downplayed. You stop confronting the lies because you fear the argument that will follow. And in the process, you dim your own light. That is how disrespect erodes a person, not in one big explosion, but in quiet moments of neglect and disregard that drain the life out of you. But you are not here to be drained. You are here to be seen, valued, and honored. The right man will never ask you to tolerate disrespect as proof of love. He will never use his temper, his silence, or his indifference to make you question your worth. Instead, he will show you that respect is not earned through sacrifice or submission. It is given freely, because love without respect is incomplete, and you deserve nothing less than that. Accepting disrespect in the name of love is like building a house on sand. It might look stable for a while, but eventually it will collapse. A relationship cannot be sustained on constant apologies, broken promises, or excuses for bad behavior. It can only grow when both people treat each other with honor. And the moment you stop demanding that honor, you start living in a version of love that isn't love at all. It's survival. You were not created to survive in love. You were created to thrive in it. And that begins the moment you decide that respect is not optional, not conditional, and not something you will ever trade just to keep someone by your side. Never carry responsibilities that are his to own, because the weight of a relationship is meant to be shared, not shifted entirely onto your shoulders. When you begin to pick up the pieces he consistently drops, you may think you're helping, you may think you're showing love, you may even convince yourself that this is what a supportive partner does. But what you're really doing is training him to believe that his obligations can become your burdens, that his lack of effort will always be covered by your sacrifice, and that accountability does not apply to him as long as you are willing to clean up the mess. Love is not about rescuing someone from their own responsibilities. It is about walking side by side as equals, each person carrying their share of the load. It often begins in subtle ways. He forgets to follow through on something important, so you step in to make sure it gets done. He neglects his financial responsibilities, so you stretch yourself thin to cover both of you. He avoids addressing conflicts, so you are the one who always initiates the difficult conversations, finding solutions while he escapes discomfort. In the beginning, it feels like love, it feels like dedication, it feels like proof that you're committed. But with time, the imbalance grows heavier, and soon the relationship no longer feels like a partnership, it feels like parenting. You become the fixer, the planner, the provider, the emotional anchor, while he enjoys the benefits without embracing the responsibilities. The danger in carrying what is not yours is that it creates resentment, both toward him and toward yourself. You resent him for not stepping up, but you also resent yourself for allowing the cycle to continue. And resentment is poison to love. It builds silently, filling the spaces between you with unspoken frustration until every act of help becomes a reminder of how unequal things have become. What once felt like love now feels like exhaustion. What once felt like support now feels like sacrifice. And sacrifice without recognition, without reciprocity, eventually breaks the very connection you were trying to protect. True love does not grow when one person is carrying both loads. It grows when each person accepts responsibility for their own life while contributing to the shared life they are building together. If he cannot manage his own responsibilities, whether financial, emotional, or practical, then it is not your role to shield him from the consequences. Shielding him only delays growth. Shielding him only enables immaturity. Shielding him only ensures that you are the one paying the price for choices that were never yours to make. And love that constantly costs you your peace, your energy, and your stability is not love worth keeping. It is not your job to fix his mistakes. It is not your job to carry his laziness. It is not your job to take on the duties he refuses to face. Your job is to show up as the best version of yourself, to take responsibility for your own life, and to build alongside a partner who does the same. Anything less than that becomes imbalance, and imbalance over time turns into a life where you are drained while he is comfortable. And when comfort comes at the expense of your well-being, it is not partnership. It is exploitation disguised as love. A healthy relationship thrives on accountability. Both people should be able to look at themselves honestly and say, "This is my part, and I will own it." Without that, there is no equality, only dependency, and dependency that leans entirely on one side eventually crushes it. When you decide to stop carrying what isn't yours, you are not being selfish. You are being fair, fair to yourself, fair to him, and fair to the relationship. Because if he truly values the love you share, he will rise to the challenge. He will learn to carry his own weight. He will understand that love is not about handing off responsibilities, but about embracing them together. And here's the truth. When you constantly rescue a man from his responsibilities, you are not protecting him, you are preventing him from growing. Growth requires ownership, growth requires accountability, growth requires effort, and if he never feels the discomfort of his own consequences, he will never develop the strength, the discipline, or the maturity needed to be a real partner. You are not created to be someone's safety net every time they fall. You were created to be a partner standing beside someone who knows how to walk on their own. And when both people can stand tall, carrying their own share, that is when love feels light, balanced, and unbreakable. Never give more than you're receiving consistently, because love was never meant to be a one-way street where one person pours endlessly while the other simply collects. Relationships flourish when there is balance, when both partners show up with equal intention, equal care, and equal investment in the bond they are building. But when you find yourself giving more energy, more time, more forgiveness, more understanding, and more sacrifice than you are receiving in return, what you have is not love, it's imbalance. And imbalance over time turns into exhaustion, where one person is depleted while the other is complacent. Love should not feel like a constant uphill climb for one, while the other strolls effortlessly beside them at first. Overgiving can feel noble. You tell yourself you're showing how deeply you care. You convince yourself that love is about patience, about giving without expecting, about proving your worth through selflessness. You go the extra mile again and again, believing that eventually he will notice, that eventually he will give back with the same intensity. But too often, that day never comes, because people grow comfortable with what they don't have to earn. If he learns that your love is unconditional, no matter how little he invests, then he will never be motivated to rise to the level you deserve. Instead, he will keep taking because you keep giving, and the cycle becomes a slow drain on your heart. The danger of giving more than you're receiving is that it teaches you to normalize emptiness. You start lowering your standards, telling yourself that maybe this is just how love works, maybe your expectations are too high, maybe your needs aren't as important. You make excuses for his lack of effort, pointing to the small gestures he occasionally offers as proof that he cares, when deep down you know they don't match the energy you've been pouring in day after day. And with time, the more you give, the less valued you feel, because value is not found in how much you offer, it's found in how much is reciprocated. Love is meant to replenish, not deplete. When both people are giving equally, love becomes a cycle of renewal. Your efforts feed his efforts feed yours, and together you create a rhythm that keeps the relationship alive. But when you are the only one pouring, you eventually run dry. And when your heart runs dry, resentment takes its place. You begin to resent the very person you wanted to love, not because you stopped caring, but because you feel unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. That resentment doesn't just hurt you. It poisons the bond, making every act of giving feel heavy, forced, and hollow. The truth is, giving without receiving is not sustainable. It doesn't matter how strong you are, how patient you are, or how much you convince yourself that things will change. Love without reciprocity is not love. It is imbalance dressed up as commitment, and commitment without balance is not a relationship, it is servitude. You were not created to serve someone else's happiness while neglecting your own. You were not created to constantly pour without ever being poured into. The love you give is valuable, but it becomes destructive when it is not matched with love in return. The man who truly loves you will never allow you to carry the weight of giving alone. He will meet you with the same consistency you bring. He will listen when you speak, show up when you need him, and invest with the same intensity you invest in him. He will not let you question your worth by offering crumbs while you give him the feast of your heart. Because true love does not ask one person to drain themselves for the comfort of the other. It demands that both people give, both people sacrifice, and both people show up equally. And when you learn to stop giving more than you're receiving, you protect your own heart. You remind yourself that your love is precious, that your energy is limited, and that your worth is not measured by how much you can endure, but by how much you are respected in return. You set the standard that love must be mutual, that giving must be balanced, and that you will not accept a life where your efforts go unnoticed while his comfort goes unchecked. Because when love is balanced, it doesn't just feel lighter, it feels real, it feels safe, and it feels like home. Never tolerate lies just to keep the peace, because the moment you allow dishonesty to live in your relationship, you plant seeds of doubt that will eventually grow into walls between you. Trust is the foundation of every strong connection, and lies, no matter how small they may seem, are cracks in that foundation. At first, you might tell yourself it's not worth the argument, not worth the fight, not worth disturbing the harmony you're trying so hard to protect. But peace that is built on lies is not peace at all. It's a fragile illusion that shatters the moment reality surfaces. And reality always surfaces because the truth has a way of revealing itself. No matter how deeply someone tries to bury it, when you tolerate lies, you are not avoiding conflict. You are inviting destruction. A lie is never just about the words spoken, it's about the trust broken. Once a lie is discovered, even if it was small, you begin to wonder what else has been hidden, what other truths have been twisted, what other secrets have been kept in the shadows. That wondering breeds suspicion, and suspicion slowly eats away at intimacy. You can't fully open your heart to someone you're not sure you can believe. And without openness, love suffocates. No matter how much you try to keep it alive, many people convince themselves that ignoring lies is a way to save the relationship. But what it really does is save the liar at the expense of the truth. You may think staying silent keeps things calm, but silence in the face of dishonesty is a quiet form of betrayal to yourself. You betray your own need for honesty, your own right to clarity, your own desire for a love that is transparent and real. And every time you excuse a lie, every time you pretend it didn't happen, you send the message that lying to you is acceptable, that your trust can be bent without consequence, that your heart can be played with as long as appearances stay intact. The danger is not only in his dishonesty, but in the effect it has on you. Lies make you question your own instincts, your own worth, your own perception of reality. You start second guessing yourself, wondering if you're overreacting, if you're imagining things, if you're asking for too much. That self-doubt is exactly what dishonesty breeds, a confusion that keeps you silent while the lies continue, and the longer you live in that silence, the harder it becomes to reclaim your voice. Eventually, you may find yourself tolerating not just small lies, but big ones, because your tolerance has trained both of you to accept dishonesty as normal. But dishonesty is never normal in a healthy relationship. The man who values you will understand that truth is not optional. He will know that even difficult truths are better than comfortable lies. He will not hide, deceive, or manipulate just to protect himself from discomfort, because he understands that love built on dishonesty is destined to crumble. If he cannot offer you the truth, then what he is offering is not love, it is performance. And performance might entertain for a while, but it cannot sustain a life together. You deserve a relationship where words match actions, where promises are kept, where trust is sacred. You deserve a man who respects you enough to be honest even when the truth is inconvenient, even when it risks conflict, even when it requires vulnerability. Because honesty is not just about avoiding lies, it is about creating safety. When you know that the words spoken to you are real, you can rest, you can trust, you can love freely without fear of betrayal. And that kind of peace, the peace built on truth, is worth far more than the fragile quiet that comes from tolerating lies. When you decide that lies will not be tolerated, you set a powerful boundary. You remind yourself that your heart is too valuable to be toyed with, that your mind is too sharp to be deceived, and that your love is too sacred to be wasted on dishonesty. You protect your peace not by ignoring reality, but by demanding truth. And when truth becomes the standard, love has room to grow, trust has space to deepen, and the bond you build is one that no storm of doubt can destroy.